So, yeah, first thing, how long have you been on the path now?
Well, I've been a monk for more than 30 years, but I was a practicing Buddhist for 10 years before that. So altogether, more than 40 years.
Wow, that's amazing. So, what has the monastic path and just following Buddhism in general granted you that maybe the lay person or the lay path wouldn't be able to grant you?
I would say uh, a, a lessening of suffering and an increase of freedom.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what we all want, right?
Yeah.
So how so? Like what could you dive into that a little more? I know it's a little complicated, but if you could put it simply to somebody that has never heard of
It's
Buddhism,
9 o'clock.
it's to
Yeah.
somebody that has really never, heard of a monastic path or your tradition or your lineage, how would you describe that to someone?
Um, well, I think the idea behind the monastic path is to have a great simplification of life and kind of pare things down to what's essential, and that releases one from a great many burdens and complications, and then the mind, there's less suffering in the mind, and there's more freedom, which seems like a paradox because we have so many rules, but uh, I think the result is a freedom in the mind,
Hmm.
a release from being entangled in all the affairs of that lay people get caught up in.
Hmm. So you're more at peace essentially?
Yes, yeah, it's more peaceful.
Hmm. So our lack of peace, I guess you could say, comes from our attachments, right? Our craving. Uh,
Yes.
so what would you say our original craving is? Like, is there a such thing in Buddhism as like original desire? Is it from ignorance
Yeah.
of our true self?
Well, it is, and I would say when you analyze it right down to what's going on in the mind, moment by moment, there's a craving inherent in the mind to satisfy itself by taking objects. And each moment, consciousness is seeking to find satisfaction and completion by taking an object, which is a impossible task. No object will ever fully satisfy the mind. But that's the primordial or root addiction.
Hmm.
Consciousness seeks to take an object, it takes an object, and then it's not satisfied, so it immediately goes out to look for another object.
Hmm. So is that just the game? We're just constantly grasping at this or that or him or her, and we're just constantly grasping, and it just keeps going, and the samsara just keeps going until one day we say, wait a second, maybe there's another way, maybe there's
Yeah, yeah,
another path.
yeah. That's it. That's what one of the Buddhist texts, the Sutta describes the process of breaking free of that. It says that um, at some point the mind does that which it has not done before since beginningless time and alights upon non-occurrence.
Hmm.
So basically, it just doesn't do that anymore. Like samsara is something you do every moment,
Hmm.
and you just stop doing that, then you realize nibbana.
That's interesting. Interesting way to put it. You say it's just something you do, because a lot of people, I feel like, would say, in terms of our vernacular, we would say suffering is happening to me, like it's happening to us. But I like how you say it's something that we do or
Yeah.
unconsciously do. So that's an
Yes.
interesting way to put it. Hmm. So when did you realize that what did it take for you personally? You don't have to go too much into it if you don't want to, but what did it take for you to say, wait, there's a different way, there's a different way to go about this.
Mm. Well, I think in my case it was very gradual. There wasn't really a singular moment. I just um, became more and more interested in doing the inner work and seeking peace inside, and it just deepened over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm. You said like 40 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't even imagine. Do you feel as though you've transformed almost into like a different incarnation in your body over those 40 years? Do you feel like you're a completely different being from 40 years ago?
Yeah, in many ways, but in some ways, I still have some of my original character from this lifetime that's not changed.
Mm,
And I don't think that's only true of monks. I think everybody, changes as they age and go through phases of life. But there's certain things that remain the same. There's a story about Sariputta, with a Buddha's chief disciple who was renowned for his wisdom, that the monks went out on alms round, and when they came to a puddle of water, they all walked carefully around it, except for Sariputta. He put both feet together and hopped over the puddle. And one of the junior monks thought that was a not very proper way for a monk to behave, and he told the Buddha about it. And the Buddha says, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's not a concern. It's just an old habit of Sariputta's. He once spent 500 consecutive lifetimes as a monkey. These old habits are hard to break."
that's great. Yeah, so not only are we holding things from our past in this incarnation, we're also holding stuff, it seems, from previous incarnations when we might have been maybe an animal or a tree or a
Yes.
bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to think. Is that in Buddhist belief where our past lives are only tied to humans, like our human lives? We are also other.
Oh, you can be reborn as many different as any type of sentient being.
Hmm. Wow, that's interesting. It's just to me that doesn't really make rational sense because it's like, how does a tree reap its karma?
Well,
I don't know.
trees in at least in Theravada Buddhism, trees are not considered sentient beings. Plants are
Oh,
not considered sentient beings, so there wouldn't be rebirth as a tree.
I
But
see.
you could be reborn as an animal or a bird or a dewa or a spirit, a ghost.
Hmm.
Many different types of incarnations.
Mm-hmm. Wow, very interesting. So there is a ghost realm in Buddhism. There is like other
Yeah,
spiritual, spirits.
yeah, that's considered one of the unfortunate or unhappy births.
Oh, really?
And the way I see it, the ghost realm, I think is kind of like an aborted rebirth. It's
Hmm.
people who are very attached to their current existence. So when they die, they can't release fully.
Yeah.
So they end up hanging around the old places where they lived, but they can no longer enjoy any of the pleasures they had as a human because they only have this ghostly body. So
Hmm.
there's great suffering of hunger and thirst and frustration in general.
Hmm. Now I know this is hypothetical and nobody really knows for sure, but how would a ghost go about it's hard to even think about like how would a ghost go about freeing themselves and liberating themselves?
Well, generally in those lower realms, there's not much that they can do. They
Hmm.
just have to wait in that realm until their karma runs out.
Oh yeah.
We've only got so much karma that brought them there, and when that runs out, then they're reborn elsewhere.
Hmm. And it's the same for us as well, right? We just have to reap our karma, and it's almost like a matter of time, would you say?
Well, no, we have in the human realm we have some freedom. So
Hmm.
we make choices. We're making karma all the time. So we make our choices. We're reaping our old karma, but at the same time, we're making fresh karma, and we can direct our forward course
Mm-hmm.
by our actions now.
I see. So the monastic path is a way to not build karma, essentially.
Well, it's a way to get, no, you don't stop making karma until you become fully enlightened, but it is a way to direct your karma towards liberation.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, I see Buddhism, as I study it, as a sort of manual. It's almost like, rather than religious dogma, it's a manual for living as a sentient being. It's something to, like you said, to build good karma so you can free yourself. And that's why I'm so attracted to it, because it's not like, bow down to an outward idol. It's, bow down to your inward idol, I guess you could say. And
Yeah.
yeah, do you see that in the same way? Like, do you see it as just like a playbook for life?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a decent way to phrase it. Um, I've called it like the user's manual for the human form.
Yeah. So what
You
did, oh, go ahead.
go ahead, go with your question. Yeah.
What did people use, like before the Buddha, before Siddhartha Gautama? Where was the Dhamma? Was it the Dharma of yoga and like the Bhagavad Gita and stuff? Like, where was Dhamma
Well,
before
well,
Buddha
the
was born?
Bhagavad Gita is later than Gautama Buddha.
Oh, okay. So what was before the Buddha
There were
then?
there were the Vedas and the Upanishads.
Okay. Now, what do you think was before that? It was just like hearsay. It was like people speaking the Dharma in like satsangs, and just kind of, it was like a literally like a song, or literally like a chanting, or
Well,
a story.
I mean, well, that's what the Vedas essentially were. They were oral tradition.
Mm-hmm.
According to the at least some Hindus, the Vedas predate the universe.
Hmm.
That first there were the Vedas, then the universe was made for as a place for the Vedas to actuate.
Ah, yeah. So at first there was the word, and then the word became flesh, type of thing.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. And it's not really the word per se, right? Like the reading of the word. It's more of like the energetic transmission of those words.
Hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, there was in the Vedic religion, there was a lot of emphasis on mantra. You know, it's the sounding of the text,
Mm-hmm.
repetition.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's like that transmission is it goes through lifetimes. Like it goes through people, and it's like something that it's a ever flowing current, it seems like the Dharma or Dhamma. It's something that is it's more than just like a concrete book. It's more than just like an actual wording, like speaking words. It seems to be just like this essence, ineffable essence. But once you can kind of grasp it, at least I'm speaking from personal experience, once you can kind of grasp what it's saying, it's rings true in my being. There's something in me that's like, yeah, there's something to these vibrations of these words on this. Like there's something that is truer than true, if that even makes sense. Like there's some kind of something. There's something there.
Yeah, yeah. I think we resonate with it because it speaks to the down that's already within us.
Mm,
Then it's externalized, and it something inside recognizes it, and we feel at home with it.
yeah. Mm. It's good to know that there's a sense of hope, I guess, in these teachings that came from thousands of years ago. There's hope for all of us if we can
Yeah.
kind of resonate at that frequency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the third noble truth of Buddhism. There is an end to suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah.
So without that third noble truth, the philosophy would be quite grim if there was no way out of it.
Yeah.
But the teaching is that there is a way to end suffering.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome to know because I feel like a popular sentiment in our societies, people feel trapped. We don't know what to do, where to go. And,
Mm-hmm.
we look for self-help stuff online or advice from other people. But to truly know deep down that no matter what happens, any kind of suffering in your life, that there is a cessation to your suffering and there is a path to take for that. That's beautiful. That's amazing. And shout out
Yeah.
Siddhartha Gautama for providing the way for us.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you think the Buddha knew what the world would be like 2000 plus years from when he took his last incarnation? As in, you doing your talks online, us having this podcast, people listening in. Like, do you think he knew the Dhamma would transform into what it is today?
Well, that's impossible to say. We can't know the mind of a Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
We he did he did predict that his teaching would last a long time, um, and and it has. It's like 25 centuries, 26 centuries now of the Buddha Dhamma still intact. And he said that that was because he created a Vinaya, an order of monks, and a structure that some past Buddhists did not do that, and their teaching didn't last very long. So the uh, the structure, the organizational structure of having a monastic sangha provides like a vehicle that carries on generation to generation
Mm,
as a container to hold the teaching.
yeah. Yeah, I like how you said that's a container. It's like this closed, it's almost like a closed loop of sacred knowledge that is passed on from person to person. It's like some kind of transmission.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So and in terms of ordination of monks, I was ordained by another monk, and he was ordained at some decades before by another monk, and so on, in direct person to person human action, tracing right back to the Buddha.
Yeah. Yeah, so like
And
the original ordination was from the Buddha, and then
yes,
that chain is like it's like a chain that has led up to
yeah,
ultimately you and others at this time. Wow, that's
yeah,
really interesting when you look at it like that. So it's like you almost have this certain degrees of separation from you and the Buddha from
yeah,
ordination.
yeah. I estimated that at one time as, of course, there's no way of knowing exactly, but I estimated it's probably about between 150 and 200 steps.
Wow. That's not really that much.
It's not that much. I mean, you could get 200 people in a medium sized hall
Yeah.
easily.
Mm. That's really interesting. I've never had that idea before. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So was the Buddha the one? Is there any other wise teacher, or is he like number one ranking in terms of wise teachers in the Dhamma?
Yes, yeah. Well, he was the Buddha. Being a Buddha is a rare event. It's an individual who has completely awakened and realized for themselves completely the truth, the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
And in different schools of Buddhism, they have different counts, and how many Buddhas there have been, and so on. In Theravada, we recognize 5 Buddhas in this world system, and Gautama, the one we know now, is number 4, and there will be one more coming before the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Maitreya, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So altogether 5, and in the whole course of the world, 5 is, that's not a lot of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So Buddha is the supreme possibility of a human being. That's the highest a human being can reach is the state of Buddhahood.
Was the Buddha a in his previous incarnation before Siddhartha? as a human being, or was it a different kind of incarnation?
Well, he had many lifetimes from um, when he started on the Bodhisattva path, like he started on the path to Buddhahood, that was 92 aeons ago. And he was a human being, a Brahmin who made the vow and was recognized by a Buddha of that time, the Pankara Buddha. And that's considered the official beginning of his Bodhisattva path. And then after that, he had many, many rebirths as humans, as animals, as devas, and so forth. And his last birth before becoming Gautama was in Tusita heaven as a deva.
Mm.
He'd completed all the work to become a Buddha. And it's like when someone becomes a Buddha, they've done all this work, including a lot of trials and suffering in various incarnations. And then the last one they get before becoming a Buddha is a very high, pleasant abiding in a heaven world. And
Mm.
then from there, he was reborn as a human and as Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, and he became the Buddha.
Hmm. As the bodhisattva?
Yeah, in Pali, they say Bodhisattva.
Okay.
We use Pali language in Theravada, but it's the
Hmm.
same. Yeah.
So Maitreya, do you think Maitreya will be in the form of a human being?
Yes.
That's it. Okay, that's interesting because I'm just curious on like how would we recognize that? Like how would we even recognize it in the time that Maitreya is alive, or would it be like, oh, 500 years goes by, that guy was probably Maitreya?
Oh no, no, it'll be quite clear. It'll be like Gautama Buddha. It'll be quite obvious.
Yeah,
And
that's really
there's
interesting.
no way he's going to come anytime soon because uh, part of the belief about Buddhas is that as long as the teachings of the previous Buddha are existent, then the next Buddha doesn't arise at that time. He arises after the teachings of the previous Buddha are completely forgotten.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
we don't live in that world.
we're still in a Buddha age. We're still in the age of Gautama Buddha.
Hmm. Yeah, I asked that to Ajahn Sana. I said, how would we recognize what Maitreya is? And he said, well, Maitreya will be more as almost like a state of consciousness. It'll be more of like a wavelength that we all tune into, rather than, bowing down as an idol to Maitreya. It'll be just like a new form of consciousness that we probably can't even comprehend at this moment. And I thought that was a intriguing answer to that.
Mm.
But yeah, when Maitreya is incarnated, I can imagine we will live in a completely different material world where we can't even fathom what that would be like or what that would feel like to have somebody on Earth that is incarnated like that.
Yeah, we can't know. But I think people will recognize him as they did Gautama because of his own illumination. It'll be obvious in his presence.
Hmm. Now, in terms of reincarnation, in the Buddhist belief system, is it like a linear path? So let's say I die and I reincarnate. Is it always going to have to be after, like technically after this lifetime? Like, we'll say whenever I die, and it'll be like after my lifetime, or could I reincarnate into the past to reap my
No,
karma?
it's always forwards in time.
Okay, all right, that's good to know, I guess.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground already. This is great. Uh, so how would one recognize stream entry in their personal life? If is there certain characteristics?
Yeah, well, stream entry there are ways of recognizing it. Stream entry is, first of all, it's a distinct moment that occurs, but that you have to be very cautious of that because in meditation, there's all kinds of powerful experiences one can have, and it's quite common for people to misinterpret them.
Yeah.
So you might just going by the experience is not enough. But stream entry is a complete purification of view, ditthi, the understanding. So it doesn't mean omniscience. It's very far from that, but it means that the view is clarified and that it can no longer fall into gross false view.
Mm-hmm.
And there's three particular signs or fetters that are eliminated at stream entry. They all relate to view. One of them is a belief in a abiding self. This is Sakaya Ditti. So the stream winner understands the emptiness of self in a complete way. And then there's a fetter that's called Silabata Paramasa, and that's usually translated rite and ritual clinging, although that's kind of misleading. Now, what it really means is having a superstitious or mechanistic view of the path, or mechanical sort of view that I do X, Y, Z, and I'll get ABC. This kind of so that's abandoned. And the third one is uncertainty, wicikitcha. So because the stream winner has glimpsed the unconditioned nibbana, there can no longer be any doubt about its reality.
Mm.
So the stream winner no longer has any uncertainty about samsara and nibbana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like how you said it was just a glimpse. Like so stream entry is almost like a sneak preview, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like the curtain parts for a moment, and the person is,
Hmm.
there is an unconditioned.
Mm. Yeah.
But that glimpse is enough to change the person in the depth forever. There's no
Mm.
going back from that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Hmm. And it's a glimpse into now those all play into each other, so it's like a glimpse into the non-self. It's a glimpse into, the process unfolding, and you say, wait, there is
Yeah,
nobody here. There's no Gary here.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hmm. That's a tough pill to swallow, I feel like, for a lot of people's ego.
Mhm. Yes.
So, how would you explain to somebody that has, like I said in the beginning, no idea what Buddhism is, no idea what we're talking about? How would you explain to somebody why glimpsing into non-self uh, is peaceful? Because that seems harrowing, right? To be like, what? I don't
Yeah,
exist.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, and the Buddha even recognized that possibility. There's one sutta where he's talking to somebody, and the fellow's asking him all kinds of questions and answering them. And at one point, he asks him, "Well, then, is there a self or not?" And the Buddha kind of dodges the question. He kind of changes the subject. He shifts aside from the answering it directly. And after the fellow left, Ananda asks him, "Lord, why didn't you tell that guy there's no self?" And the Buddha says he wasn't ready. It would only increase his confusion and fear.
Mm,
He
I
wasn't
see.
ready for that, to hear that. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, it is a difficult concept for people when it's first encountered, but gradually you begin to appreciate the liberating quality of it. If you're not bound to an identity of self, then there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no constraints, there's no boundaries.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
but we have fear because we fear that there's going to be some hurt or danger to ourself. But if there's no self to be damaged or lost, then there's nothing to fear.
Mm. Yes, I see. All comes down to attachment. We're attached to ourself.
Yes,
We're attached to the
yes,
idea of the self.
yes,
Yes. And it also most likely negates the fear of death. That's the big one, right? So
yep,
if you already don't believe in yourself dying, then I guess everyone's greatest fear dying doesn't really have much of an effect, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. That's huge. But that's only for arhants, right? Like truly, an arhant is somebody that doesn't fear their own demise. Because we can say that. I can say, oh, I'm not afraid to die. But if there was a lion coming at me or a truck coming at me right now, I'd dodge out of the way because I'm afraid of
Right.
the unknown.
Well, even an arhat would probably dodge out of the way just out of just common sense, but
Yeah.
they have no. An arhat is beyond any fear.
Mm.
As you progress in the path, your fear becomes less and less, but it's only at the stage of arhat that it would be completely eliminated.
Are they? Is an arhat almost equal with the Buddha?
In some ways, an arhat has the same realization as the Buddha, but he doesn't have the same power as the Buddha. The
Mm.
Buddha has a unique position, and he has great psychic powers, and he's the particularly the psychic power of teaching. He's able to start the whole Dhamma wheel rolling.
Mm. Mm.
That's considered the highest psychic power, the power of being able to transmit the Dhamma.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Is there So there's only the Buddha can do that. The one to start the wheel.
Only the Buddha can start the wheel, but the rest of us can keep the wheel rolling.
Uh huh. I see. Oh. What do you think would make the wheel stop? Because if there is going to be Maitreya, that means there's going to be a
Well, it'll
flow.
stop. It'll wear down. Like if you take an ordinary physical wheel and roll it down the street, like you take a car tire and roll it, it'll go for a while, then it'll wobble and fall over,
Mm.
runs out of momentum. So that original impulse gradually wears down. So the Dhamma will fade over time. It partly through human failings and corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And this is considered that, like, from the Buddha's time to now and into the future, is a slow decline of the teaching. And part of that you can understand that when the Buddha was incarnate, there were a lot of other beings that were born at that time that had very excellent advanced karma to be able to be reborn in the presence of a Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
And then many of those attained arahantship and ceased to be reborn. So in the next generation, there would be less of those highly advanced beings. There'd be ones who weren't quite as far along, and some of those attain arahantship and disappear.
Mm.
And gradually it'll decline like that, so that the teaching gradually kind of runs down by the quality of the beings is one of the factors.
Yeah. Wow, that's
And
really interesting.
also human failings and corruption and misunderstanding. We can see, even 100 years after the Buddha's time, that the Dhamma started to split into different schools. So there was already the human tendency of disputing and having different views from each other and splitting off into their own separate factions.
Mm.
So it started to fragment 100 years after the Buddha. So that's not really very long. And now, of course, today you can see many different schools of Buddhism.
Yeah. Mm. Are you talking about Mahayana and Theravada?
Well, I mean, that's two broad categories, but there's lots of, even say within Theravada, there's different lineages that have different understandings and that disagree with each other on some points. And Mahayana is a very broad category that would include like Zen and Pure Land and
Hmm.
uh, many others.
So, what was it about Theravada that attracted you? Because if they're all the Dhamma of the Buddha,
Mhm.
what is it
Yeah.
about Theravada?
Well, Theravada attracted me for a couple of reasons. In the early days, I was kind of looking at Zen and Tibetan as well. I was, hadn't really decided, and then Theravada, first of all, is the closest we have existing today to the original teachings of the Buddha. Um, and that's historically factual. You can trace the lineage of the school back. It's a little simplistic to say it is the original teaching, but it's the one that's deviated the least from the original core.
Mm.
And the other thing is the great simplicity and purity of the teachings.
Mm.
Like a lot of other traditions will kind of dress it up with a lot of fancy uh, mythology and allegory, and the not so, and have secret teachings, esoteric teachings, and all this kind of thing. But Theravada is all out on the table,
Hmm.
and it's very the core teaching is very pristine.
I see. Hmm. Wow. I don't even know where to go from here. Um, yeah. Would you would you do anything differently in your journey?
Oh yeah, I think everybody would, but you only get you know, it's like a one-way street. You can't go back and change things.
Yeah, so it's pointless to even ponder.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I understand. And that's kind of the essence of Buddhist. I mean, it's weird, right? Because we're having this conversation in words and we're talking about these concepts, but when it really comes down to it, it's like, I mean, there's a point to it in speaking about it, obviously, bringing light to Dhamma. But ultimately, and there's really not. I mean, you can't put words on it. You can just, like, it's pointless. Like the story you told before with the Buddha and the man that was ready or not, and the nature of non-self. It's
yeah,
kind of that idea. It's like it's pointless to ponder the self or the non-self, right? You know what I'm trying to say? It's like it's just
yeah,
it comes to a certain point. I feel like on the path, at least for me, where it's just like, well, just you just have to figure it out through direct experience, through meditation. There's only so much a book or a podcast or somebody else can tell you. It just has to be through something in your own consciousness.
yeah, exactly. And the work has to be done inside, in the inner work. You have to find your own way.
Yeah,
Any external teachings, including those of the Buddha, are at best they're going to be like a guide,
yeah.
kind of point you which way to look. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to end up doing the work yourself. You have to find out the truth inside.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come from outside.
Is that another tenet in the Buddhist belief where, don't become attached to the ideas or like somebody else's teachings, Is there is there something, it's the story of the finger pointing at the moon. Is
Yes,
there
yeah,
is
yeah,
there is there a teaching that with the Buddha with
yeah.
that?
Well, the Buddha said not, don't be attached to views. Don't be attached to your views and opinions. He repeated that often in different ways. And at one point, he said, even this teaching of mine, as pure and refined as it is, if you hold on to it dogmatically, it'll only be to your harm.
Hmm.
And he give the example of, a metaphor, let's say, or parable of uh, grasping a blade of kusa grass, which is a tough fibrous grass that grows in India. And if it's grasped properly, then it can be used. It's very useful and valuable. You can use it to make thatch and so on. But if you grasp it the wrong way, like across the grain, you cut your hand.
Mm, I
So
see.
whoso grasp wrongly grasps doth cut the hand,
Mm-hmm.
and that's an analogy for holding the teachings in a dogmatic way.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the toughest ones because it's so easy to get sucked in to that. Like, how do you not hold that as an idol? It's really tough because it's like it's ironic because the teachings are telling you not to hold the teachings as an idol, but it's like we go to the teachings to teach us not to hold that as an idol. It's like this weird
Yeah,
paradox.
yeah, yeah,
But that's just part of the game. That's just part of the whole path.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. So, are you happy? You know.
yeah. I am. Yeah, I'm quite content and happy where I've landed up in this life.
Hmm, that's good. Well, what do you want? You know, is there anything that you want in this incarnation?
Uh, I guess I want to finish out what's left of my time in peace and quiet, and uh, see where the next. Hopefully, if I don't make it completely off the wheel this lifetime, I get next time. I hope I land somewhere at least as good as this one.
Yes, I think you will. I think you're doing good work here. Maybe you'll be born in the time of Maitreya. That would be
Oh yeah,
interesting, huh?
yeah, that would be.
Oh man. I think we can probably wrap this one up. This is the quickest talk that I've had, but we've covered so much ground in such little time. Do you have any last statements to the world? You know, anything you want to say?
Just keep going, keep the mind open, keep exploring and investigating,
Mm,
and uh, don't let things get you down. Just be a light unto yourself.
beautiful. Be a light unto yourself. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, thank you, Ajahn. This was amazing. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I wish you the best. Stay warm. Thank you for
You
anybody
too.
that listened. And
Okay.
yeah, appreciate it. And goodbye.
Okay. Bye now.